Welcome to Relative Growth. I am Sablin, and today we are going to talk about how to recognize and avoid toxic people in your life. If you are new to this channel, we are all about helping you find happiness and building confidence. And toxic people are a surefire way to bring you down. So if you have not already done so, please subscribe to our channel, give this video a like, and let us know in the comments below if you've had to deal with any toxic people, because that's where it's all about. This is about a community and learning from each other. So let's get started. A healthy relationship can bring you so much joy and happiness, but it's important that you know how to wholeheartedly love yourself. And in the month of February, it's all about love, which means you're going to see it everywhere. You're going to see the flowers and the candies and the commercials. And this can either be a really blissful time or a very painful time, depending on where you are in your relationship. There are many of us who are dealing with toxic relationships, or you're single because you just got out of a toxic relationship, and it can be painful. So what we wanted to talk about today is really on how to identify if you're in a toxic relationship or if a person that you're around is toxic. So there are 9 signs that you're dealing with a toxic person, and I'm going to break it up into 2 categories. And don't mind the squeaky, I have a little puppy down here. Well, she's not a puppy anymore, but she's playing. So I'm going to break it up into 2 areas that I find really valuable, because when you're with a toxic person, they are going to gaslight you, and they are going to tell you that what you're feeling and what you're thinking is wrong because it does not align with what they want to get out of the relationship. And what does that do? It really makes you second guess yourself. So out of the 9 signs that we are going to talk about, 4 of them is to really learn how to trust yourself. And what I want you to look at if you're dealing with a person is, are you walking away questioning yourself? And we all have this time where you're with a friend, or you're with a spouse, or you're with a partner, and something happens and you question whether you had said something or done something wrong. That happens to all of us. But what I'm talking about is on an ongoing basis, almost to the point where you want to bring a tape recorder into your conversations, because a week later, a month later, the topic will come up and you're going to be like, well, I know we talked about it. And the toxic person's going to be like, no, we didn't. You're like, but I swear, I was really clear. I was concise. If you start having that feeling, pay attention to it, because I know that it's really easy to slip into, well, maybe I wasn't communicating clearly enough. But if you find that everyone else in your life says, no, you communicate very clear. In fact, we enjoy our conversations. It's easy to understand what you're asking from us. It's only a handful of people that are saying, hey, no, you didn't say it like this. That's a red flag. Number 2 is feeling unheard and unseen. And this can also kind of fall along again with the questioning of yourself. It's one of those where you feel like you can kind of walk into the room, and if you don't really, if you're not of value to that toxic person at that specific moment, they kind of discard you. You're of no value to them. And that can feel very painful. And once again, you're probably questioning yourself, being like, what did I do? You didn't do anything. So having that feeling of feeling unseen, unheard is another red flag that you're with a toxic person. A third can be that you walk away from the encounter feeling drained, feeling exhausted. And this kind of goes into number 4, which is when you're with a toxic person, you're constantly walking on eggshells because you don't know what type of mood are they going to be in today. Are they going to need something from you, so they're going to be very happy and very engaged? Or is it going to be the opposite, where they're in a bad mood, so no matter what you say or how you say it is going to trigger their anger? And that is definitely a red flag. If you walk away feeling drained, or that you have to walk on eggshells so you don't trigger either their insecurities, their fear, their temper, whatever it is. So trusting your gut and trusting your instinct is very important. It was put in there as a fail-safe to keep you safe, and toxic people are something you should be kept safe from. So the second part of trusting yourself and the 9 signs of a toxic person is keeping signs out for these characteristics. Now, once again, everyone has a bad day. We are wanting to really look at the whole picture before we start pigeonholing people as being a toxic person. But there's 5 characteristics I want you to look out for in a person to see if they're toxic to you and, your environment. 1 is, are they judgmental? Can no one live up to their standards? Are they constantly gossiping about other people? This is a huge indicator. And, we all like to gossip every once in a while, but this is something along the lines where, they're feuding with their neighbors, they're feuding with parents that, your friend's school, that their coworkers can never be as good as them. No one will ever be as good as them, and so they disregard them as not being good enough. Or maybe the neighbors or the parents don't see eye to eye to them, and so instead of having just a mutual agreement of being like, they're not my favorite person, they kind of talk down about them. So being very judgmental. Another sign is being needy. And when I talk about needy, we all have different stages in our life. And when a friend can't understand the stage that you're in and almost guilts you for not being able to spend more time with them, to do more with them, that can be a really big red flag. I mean, it's nice that they want to spend time with you, and we, encourage each other to go spend time with people. It's how we build up our confidence and our happiness. But if they really just can't understand or support you with the stage that you're at, where you're giving all that you can give and it's just not enough for them, that's a red flag. Number 3 is that they're always the victim. That no matter what is going on in their life, people are out to get them. That it's the woe is me sort of situation where nothing that they do is wrong. Everyone else around them has led them to a path of where they're at, whether they're doing poorly in school and they're doing poorly in a relationship, or they're doing poorly at work. It's going to be their boss's fault or their teacher's fault, or even, their spouse's fault for why they're not succeeding. And you have to look at that, because in the beginning, we want to help these people. We feel like, this poor person is just having a hard time. We want to go in and we want to help them. However, it's a pattern. And what you will also find is they won't take responsibility for themselves. It's always everyone else's fault. So that is a sign to keep an eye out for. And the 5th one is going to the extremes. So it's an always or never. And they're going to use it in their vocabulary. You're always late. You're never here to support me. It's always a fight with you. And this is one of us that I noticed I did this in the beginning. And I realized, I'm like, but oh my goodness, it was just a poor choice of words, because it really isn't an always or a never situation. And so it was one that I had to look at. And I also teach my children now, where you're like, are you guys always fighting? Does your brother always get to pick the TV? And if we aren't taught that from a young age, I think it kind of goes along in our vocabulary. But as you start recognizing it and maybe even pointing it out to those around you, a healthy relationship would be like, okay, you're right. It's not always. It's not never. That was to my extreme. And they can admit that and then correct themselves. With the toxic person, not so much. So here's the deal. You now have the signs to look out for a toxic person. On best case scenario, you can start distancing yourself from these toxic people, because it's February. It's a month of love. And you know what? The person that we have to hold true to ourselves is us. First and foremost, you need to protect yourself so that you can be there healthy and willing and able for other people in your life. But sometimes that's just not able. You're not able to separate yourself from toxic people. And the worst advice I heard was just to cut and leave. And you're like, that's not going to happen. Maybe it's a business partner. Maybe it's a spouse. Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's a sibling. Maybe it's There's so many different, maybe it's a child that you just don't fully have the option, or you're just not ready to cut and leave right now. Wherever you are, don't worry about it. I support you with wherever you're at. But what I would love is to give you some tips on how to deal with these toxic people. And so I have 8 tips that we're going to go down. And we'll start with number 1 is try to not take it personally. Like, oh, I know how hard this is, because I still have a hard time with it. There are times where I still take it personally. But you have to remember that it is not about you. This toxic person is dealing with fear, anxiety, insecurities, and they're projecting it on you. So, how do you get through this of not taking it personally? You find either a good friend that you can lean on, that you can review the situation with, a therapist, you journal, you start learning the signs of healthy relationships to see where within the communication or within the situation you can own your own, but then you let go of and let the other person own it. And they're not gonna own it. They really aren't. Remember, they're gonna play the victim, or they're always right. So you just kind of have to let it go of like, I'll let you just deal with that whenever you're ready. Number 2 is a idea of gray rocking. This is the idea where you just don't go into deep conversations or deep things that are going to trigger your toxic person in your life. You very much keep it as a, how's the weather? You know, you find safe topics that you can talk about that aren't going to trigger a fight, so to say. Number 3, which is the most important, is love yourself. The toxic people in your life are going to do everything that they can to pull you down, to have you work within their realm of what their needs and their wants are. They're not going to care about what your wants and what your needs are. And if you start to gain success, they're going to quickly tell you how bad you are in a different part of your life to make you second guess yourself. So just love yourself to the point where you can say, thank you for that input. I'm either going to accept it or I'm not. It either is true or I'm going to find it not true. So it's really important that you love yourself. Number 4 is getting clear on your values and your priorities. Why is this important? Because your values and your priorities are your northern star. That's what you're going to say, I am committing to. I'm committing to that these are my values that I hold true, and these are my priorities. And if you're with a toxic person that does not support these values, you can say, you know, I appreciate your input, but I'm going to stick, this is where I am going and what my path is. Thank you very much. And once you have that clear path, that clear northern star, it's a lot easier to say no thank you. Number 5 is get informed on what a healthy and unhealthy interactions look like. And I really like a therapist online. I'm going to give links in the description below on 2 therapists on YouTube that I love their videos about dealing with toxic people. One, she goes through all the different descriptions of, you know, what is a toxic person, the different types of toxic people. You know, she talks a lot about gray walking and how to implement it. Another one, he does these videos where he has a conversation between a toxic person and then a conversation between a healthy person. So if you have been surrounded by toxic people, this really helps you start to identify what a relationship should be looking like. So it's a great tool to use. So number 6 is learning when to walk away and create space. And once again, I'm not saying walking away, abandoning the relationship. You may not be in that position to do so, but knowing how and when and where you're like, I'm going to take some space from me so I can recenter myself, rejuvenate myself, because it definitely can be draining to be with a toxic person a lot. So number 7 is creating boundaries. This is extremely important. It goes right back to understanding your values and your prioritizing. But learning to say no, learning of what are healthy boundaries, and I will recommend a book down below in the section with boundaries, is so important, because you know what? To be able to love fully is to be able to say no, is to say, you know what? This does not work for me. I am unable to give this to you wholeheartedly. I'm going to be doing it with resentment and anger, and that's not okay. We don't want that in our relationship. And just know that the toxic people are not going to like your boundaries. They're going to push back. They're not going to be used to them, which is also why it's so important that you love yourself and know that you and only you need to be okay with the direction that you're going in. And number 8, trust yourself. If something doesn't feel right, if something doesn't look right, learning how to trust your instincts. And I know how hard this can be, but it is a very important step to being able to deal with toxic people. So wherever you are in your life, whether you're dealing with a toxic coworker, a family member, a spouse, or a child, I wish you well, because I know how hard it is. Be brave, stay curious, and love yourself. Bye.